To get revenge for his wife's betrayal, this husband did something deeply disturbing.
It's time to wake up.
This was only the beginning of his revenge against Emma. Before he died, he had already handcuffed the two of them together, thrown away every tool in the house that could unlock the cuffs, and completely cut off all contact with the outside world. And now, she was stranded in the wilderness, dozens of miles away from the city. So, with no one to help her, does Emma still have even the slightest chance of survival? Without further ado, let's begin. Mark and Emma were once a couple who had loved each other for many years, and in just a few days, it would be their wedding anniversary. But neither of them knew that by this point. They were already hiding their own secrets. Not long ago, while the two were taking an elevator, they happened to run into Mark's colleague Tom. The moment Tom pressed the elevator button, Mark smelled the exact same perfume on him as the one his wife wore. Although the two desperately explained that this was their first time meeting, the panic and nervousness on his wife's face had already revealed everything. Mark knew in his heart that his wife had betrayed him. On the surface, he acted as if nothing had happened, but inside, his emotions were already raging. Afterward, Mark spent a large amount of money investigating their relationship, and sure enough, his wife really had betrayed him. On the day of their wedding anniversary, Mark launched his extremely twisted revenge plan. To make Emma drop all her guard, Mark first gave her a custom-made necklace.
They say diamonds are a girl's best friend. About 11 years. Apparently makes it our steel anniversary. So I had this specially made.
Then, Mark personally placed the necklace around her neck. But this was not just a beautiful piece of jewelry, it was also a shackle meant to lock down her fate. After dinner, Mark said he wanted to drive Emma to a romantic and mysterious place. To create the perfect atmosphere, Mark deliberately blindfolded his wife. Emma, who had no idea danger was getting closer, could only go along with everything he arranged. Before long, the two arrived at a remote villa dozens of miles away from home. The moment Emma walked into the room, she was completely stunned. The floor was covered with rose petals, candles lit every corner of the room, and the walls were covered with sweet photos of the two of them from over the years. That night, it felt as if the two of them had returned to the days when they were passionately in love. Looking at everything Mark had carefully prepared, Emma was deeply touched, and the guilt she felt for betraying her husband grew even stronger. Just like that, the two spent the night together as if they had gone back to the beginning of their love. The next morning, Emma woke up in a daze, only to find her wrist tightly trapped by something cold and hard. Before she could say a word, a sound rang beside her.
It's time to wake up.
In that instant, her mind went completely blank, and out of instinct, she shoved Mark off the bed, but the heavy pull dragged her down to the floor with him. Still terrified, she desperately tried to escape, only to realize that the handcuffs had locked her tightly to Mark's dead body. No matter how she struggled or pulled, the cold steel shackle did not move at all. Broken down, she collapsed onto the freezing floor and screamed for help at the top of her lungs. But the only response was endless silence. Time passed second by second, and Emma slowly forced herself to calm down. Her first thought was to call the police for help, but Mark had already cut off every communication signal. As her eyes scanned the room, she saw the revolver that had taken Mark's life. She grabbed the gun, aimed it at the connection point of the handcuffs, and pulled the trigger again and again, but all she heard was a hopeless empty click. It turned out Mark had only loaded one bullet into the gun, and he had already used it on himself. Furious, she threw the useless gun under the bed. Unable to find any useful tools in the bedroom, she had no choice but to drag Mark's heavy body into the other rooms. Searching for a way to escape, Emma struggled with all her strength and moved into the walk-in closet, where only a single white wedding dress hung alone. Her fingers gently brushed across the dress that once symbolized happiness, and she vaguely began to understand why Mark had chosen such an extreme method. But when she took down the wedding dress, a safe suddenly appeared on the wall. To reduce the resistance while dragging the body, Emma placed the wedding dress underneath it like a sliding cloth, then put on Mark's shirt to protect herself from the cold. Dragging the cold body behind her, she moved step by step with great difficulty toward the staircase. She finally reached the door and looked outside, but the scene in front of her plunged her into complete despair. Outside was an endless snow-covered wilderness, with not a single sign of people anywhere nearby. Only then did she fully understand that last night, on their wedding anniversary, Mark had insisted on blindfolding her and driving for hours to this remote lakeside villa, calling it a surprise, when in reality, he wanted to trap her inside this isolated frozen prison until she died. In this freezing wilderness, even if she did not starve, the bone-chilling cold would eventually take her life. She thought this was the full extent of Mark's revenge, but the real nightmare had only just begun. In the water collected inside a vase, she saw her phone, but after soaking there all night, the device was completely ruined. Then she frantically searched through drawers and cabinets, but found nothing. Every item that could have been used as a tool had already been cleared out by Mark in advance. Fortunately, she found Mark's car key in the trash can. She quickly put on Mark's trousers, tore the wedding dress into strips to wrap around her feet against the freezing wind, and used every bit of strength she had to drag the body toward the garage. After exhausting herself just to get into the driver's seat, her tightly stretched nerves finally relaxed a little. She thought she could finally escape this place, but the clicking sound when she turned the ignition once again pushed her into despair, because Mark had already emptied the gas tank. Just then, the car stereo suddenly started playing on its own, clearly.
But I was being called away. And I couldn't just sit back and watch you live happily ever after with him.
Mark had deliberately left the car key behind just so she could hear the malicious monologue he had recorded in the vehicle. Emma was once again swallowed by anger and despair, but she could not deny that she had indeed betrayed their marriage. With no other choice, she could only drag the body back into the house. After wiping the blood from her face, Emma looked at her miserable reflection in the mirror and suddenly realized something was wrong with the necklace Mark had given her the night before. She felt along the chain from end to end, only to discover that the entire necklace had no clasp at all, and no matter how hard she pulled, she could not take it off. Could this be another trap Mark had set for her? Just as she was on the verge of breaking down, a knock suddenly came from outside the house. When she opened the door, the person standing there was actually her lover, Tom. Only then did Emma realize that Mark had used her name to lure Tom to this place. The two of them immediately realized a terrifying truth. After all the effort Mark had put into trapping her here, there was no way he had sent Tom to rescue her. Just as Tom was about to go back to his car to get his phone and call the police, a car suddenly sped toward them from the distance, and a powerful sense of danger instantly surrounded them. Tom told Emma, whose movement was restricted, to lock the door while he went outside alone to deal with the situation.
Listen, why don't you just let us inside so we can do our job, all right?
Look, now.
All right.
The man who got out of the car said nothing, pulled out a knife, and killed Tom on the spot. Emma curled up in the corner of the house, so terrified she did not even dare to breathe. The newcomers were two brothers, the older one named Bobby Ray and the younger one named Jimmy. The younger Jimmy panicked after witnessing the bloody scene, because he had only been called by his brother Bobby Ray to help, and he had never imagined it would lead to someone dying. From the conversation between the brothers, Emma learned that Bobby Ray was a hired killer paid by Mark, a desperate man with nothing to lose. After calming down his frightened brother, Bobby Ray and Jimmy split up to search for Emma. Bobby Ray soon found the safe on the second floor, while Emma seized the chance to drag Mark's body all the way to the boathouse outside. She knew very clearly that the only way to survive was to get out of the handcuffs. Looking around, her eyes locked onto the heavy boat anchor, and the only option was to sever Mark's finger and break free from the cuffs. But just as she was about to do it, Jimmy followed the blood trail on the ground and found his way there. Emma hurriedly covered herself with a cloth, but she did not have time to hide Mark's body. The moment Jimmy saw the corpse, he was scared out of his mind and stumbled back to tell Bobby Ray. The two brothers returned to the boathouse, and when Bobby Ray saw Mark's body, he finally realized he had been tricked by his employer.
It's him.
Who?
The guy who hired us.
Now that the employer was dead, Jimmy only wanted to leave this place as quickly as possible, but the greedy Bobby Ray insisted on opening the safe and getting the diamonds inside before he would stop. Hiding beneath the boat, Emma was shivering from the cold, and she also figured out what the two men were thinking. Mark was already dead, and she was the only one who knew the safe code. so the brothers would do whatever it took to find her. If she wanted to survive, she had to escape as soon as possible. Bobby Ray soon noticed the bare footprints on the ground and concluded that Emma had not gone far. After the two brothers left the boathouse to search for her, Emma wrapped her feet again with torn cloth and then discovered spare fuel stored on the speedboat. As long as she could drag the fuel back to the garage and fill the car, she could escape the brothers' pursuit. Meanwhile, Ginny discovered that the safe not only required a code, but also needed a fingerprint to open. Bobby Ray immediately ordered Ginny to go back and drag Mark's body over, while he continued searching for Emma. Emma perfectly avoided Ginny's line of sight and quickly dragged the spare fuel tank into the garage to fill the car. But during the refueling, clear footsteps sounded outside the door. She immediately hid behind the car tire. The cautious Bobby Ray followed the drag marks into the garage, and the moment he saw the fuel tank being poured, he instantly saw through Emma's escape plan. Emma hid beneath the car, watching Bobby Ray's every move. Taking advantage of the moment Bobby Ray turned away, she quickly crawled out from under the car and slipped out through the side door. Emma once again avoided Ginny's sight and hid in the basement through the side door. After passing through the basement and returning to the first floor, she saw Tom's cold body, and grief flooded her heart. He had driven dozens of miles just to come see her, only to lose his life for nothing. But this was not the time to grieve, so she could only search Tom's body for anything that might be useful. After searching for a while, the brothers still could not find Emma, so they had no choice but to return to the villa. At that moment, they discovered that the shoes on Tom's feet were gone, making Bobby Ray even more certain that Emma was still hiding somewhere inside the villa. The garage, the boathouse, and the basement had all been searched, leaving only the attic on the top floor. Sure enough, Emma was hiding under a white sheet in the attic. Bobby Ray quickly chased her up to the attic and yanked off the white sheet, but underneath it was only a bag of golf clubs, leaving him deeply disappointed. Emma struck and knocked him unconscious, then found the car key on him. When Ginny heard the noise and rushed up to the attic, all he saw was his brother lying unconscious on the floor, while Ginny stepped forward to check Bobby Ray's injuries. Emma quickly locked the attic door and used a golf club to knock off the door handle, temporarily trapping the two brothers inside the villa. Emma immediately rushed to Bobby Ray's car, thinking this time she could finally get away. But the moment she started the vehicle, her escape plan failed again. In a panic, she dialed the emergency number. Bobby Ray yanked Emma out of the car and kicked her hard enough to knock her unconscious. When Emma woke up again, her wrist was once again handcuffed to Mark's dead body. Bobby Ray brought over the heavy lockbox and threatened Emma with a knife, forcing her to reveal the safe code. Emma knew very well that the moment she gave them the code, she would be dead.
Help me!
Stop, Bobby!
Okay.
Don't you move.
Just as the standoff continued, Ginny saw the gun Emma had thrown under the bed. No one expected that Ginny, who had always been timid and unwilling to hurt anyone, would suddenly pull out the gun and aim it at his own brother.
Need the knife. Man, I swear.
Ginny said he only wanted the diamonds and had no intention of taking anyone's life, and as long as Emma honestly gave him the code, he would let her go. With nowhere left to turn, Emma had no choice but to agree to Ginny's terms. After they reached an agreement, Ginny found a tool and pried open the handcuffs on Emma's wrist, and Emma also gave him the safe code. With the code and Mark's fingerprint, the safe opened smoothly, but the moment the safe door opened, Bobby Ray froze on the spot. There were no diamonds inside the safe at all, only a saw engraved with a message from Mark. Mark's intention was obvious. He had specially made this necklace impossible to remove, planning to use Bobby Ray to kill Emma, then take the diamonds from the necklace as payment for the hired killer. Ginny used every bit of strength he had, but he still could not cut through the necklace. Realizing he had been completely played by Mark, Bobby Ray grew more and more furious and out of control, then snatched the gun from Ginny's waist and prepared to kill Emma directly.
Stop! Get off me! Stop! Get off me!
During the struggle between the two brothers for the gun, Jimmy's head slammed hard into a metal hook on the wall, killing him instantly. Bobby Ray, now completely out of his mind, blamed all his anger on Emma, but Emma refused to just wait for death, and the two fought again. In a direct fight, the physically weaker Emma was no match for the strong Bobby Ray, and she was soon pinned to the floor as a knife stabbed deep into her thigh. The moment Bobby Ray leaned forward and fell to the ground, Emma seized the chance and locked the handcuffs around his wrist, dragging her injured leg through the pain. Emma used all her strength to escape the room, but the physically powerful Bobby Ray soon recovered. He dragged Mark's body behind him and chased after Emma like a madman. During the brief moment when Bobby Ray accidentally fell, Emma rushed into the garage, started the car, and slammed on the gas, but because Bobby Ray had already punctured the tire earlier, the vehicle quickly lost control and crashed straight into the boathouse. Under the massive impact, half the car hung over the edge and plunged into the freezing hole in the ice, while Emma hit her head and briefly lost consciousness. Seeing the crash, Bobby Ray thought his chance had come, so he held the knife in his mouth and struggled to drag Mark's body toward the vehicle. But when he finally dragged himself to the car and opened the door, he discovered that Emma was already gone. Meanwhile, Emma dragged her bleeding, injured leg across the ice with great difficulty, while Bobby Ray dragged Mark's body behind him. Following her like a demon, the two began a life-or-death chase across the frozen lake. Before she could crawl very far, the smooth ice made it almost impossible for Emma to move, and her movements became slower and slower. Bobby Ray grabbed her ankle, and the two began fighting again. In the chaos, the knife in Bobby Ray's hand pierced the ice, and the ice began cracking with sharp snapping sounds. Mark's body dragged Bobby Ray down. Bobby Ray held tightly onto Emma, and all three of them fell together into the freezing lake water, driven by pure survival instinct. Emma pulled the knife from Bobby Ray's leg and stabbed it hard into his eye socket. But just as Emma was about to reach the surface, the thick layer of ice blocked her way, and no matter how hard she slammed into it, she could not break through. With no way out, she could only swing the knife wildly and hack at the ice. At the final moment before she was about to run out of air, the knife finally pierced through the ice. Using the last bit of strength in her body, Emma struggled onto the ice. In the distance, police sirens grew closer and closer. She calmly took off the wedding ring on her hand and casually threw it into the hole in the ice. This ring, which symbolized a false vow, sank forever into the dark, freezing lake along with Mark's twisted and obsessive soul. At this point, the film comes to an end, when love and hate are both wiped clean, and every conspiracy finally collapses. The once romantic vow of "till death do us part" becomes the most ironic joke of all. Blinded by endless hatred and obsession, Mark turned the love nest they once shared into a killing ground filled with schemes, using even his own death to set a cruel trap. In the end, not only did he fail to trap Emma, he completely destroyed himself instead. Although Emma survived this life-or-death ordeal and broke free from both the emotional prison and the physical handcuffs, her heart was left with psychological scars that could never truly fade. Hidden inside the film is a painfully sharp truth. The deepest wounds often come from the people closest to us, and the most vicious schemes are often wrapped in romance and tenderness. Obsessive possessiveness will eventually create a tragedy that cannot be undone, and twisted fixation will burn away every bit of warmth that once existed. Only when two people know how to cherish and respect each other can love truly last.